I'm Chaplain Harrison, the 543rd ISRG Chaplain, and I'd like to thank you for the extended time that you give me today. Usually I don't get 20 to 25 minutes to make a presentation, but I do want to go over something that's very important for our unit in the form of an action plan for moral injury. So the bottom line up front, I'm here to present an action plan to address moral injury in our unit to improve our members' mental health and productivity for our mission. We are facing and seeing the effects of diminished mental health, and moral injury is a great source of this. It needs to be addressed so we can help those who serve with us here in our unit. Today I'll be going over the definition of moral injury, the challenges in the military regarding moral injury, an assessment plan, followed by a holistic care plan, and just to highlight some things that we need to keep in mind in regards to continued awareness on moral injury and as it affects our members. So we know a lot about PTSD, and moral injury has been lumped into it for a long time, but this is a definition of moral injury that I'm comfortable with, and it gets after why it's so detrimental to our members. Moral injury is a betrayal of one's personal and foundational core values as a result of an action or witnessing behaviors that go against moral beliefs. Now, this can be caused by a person's actions or witnessing something or even hearing something, and it's different than PTSD. Now, PTSD would equal you have been victimized by your trauma. Moral injury is something that happens that you have done or witnessed or allowed that turns you into the villain or the victimizer in the narrative when you replay this over your head that causes the trauma. I use the word core value to emphasize the moral foundation, that each one of us has a moral foundation or ethical core that we kind of stand upon when we do the things that we do that propels us forward in life. And basically, if you are a victim if you are experiencing moral injury, the person who is experiencing it, they almost cannot live with what they have committed or allowed to happen. They no longer see themselves as the person they used to be, and it brings them great shame and guilt as they process what's happened and as they remember what happened. So there's a lot of shame and guilt there. And those are kind of characteristics of what people are at the core, what they're experiencing when they look at themselves in the mirror and they can't get past what's happened or what they've done. Knowing the definition, there are some challenges to addressing moral injury. Also some challenges that our members have when they're serving with the condition of moral injury. Now, when we try to address moral injury or any type of mental health, but specifically moral injury in our unit, specifically our unit being intelligence, and we have some AFSOC assets and even some maintainers here, there's a stigma in the military of getting helped as if you're weaker. There's also a stigma in addressing moral injury or somebody getting help for it, that you're putting yourself over your service, as if I got to take time to leave the mission to do this, and what's happening on the flight line, or what's happening in the mission, or what's happening in the unit if I'm taken out of commission to get this help. And that ties into the perceived consequences. Will I lose my clearance? For members of security forces, will I lose the ability to carry my weapon? Will I be allowed to work on certain aircraft anymore if I get help, if I do what's right for myself? Now, for those serving who have moral injury, who've been diagnosed, who've gotten beyond the problems of addressing it, the culture of why we don't address it, they're actually having this, it goes a little bit further, they're having an identity crisis. Who am I? What have I done? Should I get help? Do I deserve help? Do I deserve anyone's help? And that leads into an emotional compromise if that is suppressed for too long. If we try to just suck it up and press to get the mission done, or we minimize it, people will end up breaking on the emotional level because they just can't come to grips with what they've done and who they are and what they see themselves to be due to the severe guilt and shame. Now, as a chaplain, I have to have a way to assess this. Once we get to the point where somebody can get past those challenges and they get to the point where I do need help and they come see me as a chaplain, I want to use a narrative-focused counseling approach. Every airman that we see that's dealing with a mental health struggle, or every airman that we see, period, especially the ones that return from our mission sets and deployments or on the sorties they go on, each one of them represent a story. And in that story, chaplains such as myself can connect and assess the distress. Hearing their story allows me to connect with them on a fundamental level and helps build trust. It helps them see that, hey, somebody can hear me and not judge me, and then lead them or bring the consciousness the need for them to heal from the invisible wounds. A session like this will plant the seeds for them to seek help even further and trust others, because they believe that they're the only ones going through this. But they need a bigger support system than the voices that are in their heads, because with moral injury, often you become your worst enemy. I also would like to incorporate beyond this, when they're comfortable, group therapy, sharing sessions when the unit returns. If a group of airmen goes out and they had a particularly hard mission or something detrimental happened and there is a potential for more injury or PTSD to be experienced, I want to actually have a group session with everyone who was involved, and that way that will build camaraderie, and through the story and each other's stories build help and hope and trust in each other to move forward in the healing process. So if we can assess it, and I do identify there are individuals or groups that need help after it's diagnosed, I would like to approach their care holistically through a multidisciplinary team approach. And this would happen in one specific form that I have in mind today that I'm putting together now for the unit as members come back from deployment, or if there's an event that happens and we do the group session and they have bonded. I would like to put together a 3-day small group retreat for those identified with moral injury. And each day will have its own theme that will address the soul, the mind, and the body. And the care team would be made of the chaplain staff, mental health staff, physical training leaders, and one I didn't list on here, a member that they can relate to who has actually a little bit further on in their journey when dealing with moral injury as a guest speaker. And I think this format, as we'll explain here in a minute, will give a form of them to bond and help our comprehensive airman fitness model for them to see if I take care of my mental health as far as my moral injury is concerned, it will help me in every other area. And it'll just give them a little bit more support as they move forward, not just on the individual level, but with each other and in sharing their stories together. Now the retreat design, I'm going to move myself here. The retreat design will, as I mentioned before, will incorporate 3 days. Day 1 will focus on the body, and this is where our physical training leaders will come in. There will be 3 physical challenges on that day. The first challenge would be 100 push-ups, 100 sit-ups, and 100 pull-ups. Now, this will be modified. They could be able to do it, and it's for time. They can do it, break it up in any way they want to break it up, 10 sets of 10, however. And they could be modified. If you can't do 100 full-on pull-ups, there'll be a way to modify those. But the key for this is to say, can I get through something that seems almost impossible? And can the stronger members support the members who aren't as physically strong and to get them through this? The next challenge would be an 8-pound weight challenge. They hold an 8-pound weight in front of them. And that's like the weight of your head. It's not very heavy, but it's to see how long you can do it. Again, another connecting piece. The ones that give up earlier can encourage the ones that are stronger to keep going. And that'll all happen before lunch. So I forgot to mention, they'll start up with breakfast, do the first 2 physical challenges, have lunch, and then they'll go on a 8-mile ruck carrying 40 pounds. Now, if you look at the day 1 quadrant, it says ending in an 8-mile ruck, lighten the load. They'll take 4 10-pound plates and they'll put a sticky on it and write down something that's heavy that they're carrying, a burden that they're carrying, or maybe a word that they tell themselves that kind of knock them down when they are dealing with the throes of their moral injury. And every 2 miles, they take one of the weights off. We'll stop, take one of the weights off, and set it on the side of the road. This will all be happening on our compound at Canyon Lake on the military side, so we have ample room for this, and it's a minimal cost. But every 2 miles on the trail, they'll take one of those weights out that they've identified, something that's holding them down, and they'll lighten the load. The chaplain team will be doing all of these challenges with them, and every 2 miles on the ruck march, they will stop. We will set the tone for what they're setting down and ask them to meditate on that, set it down, and then we'll keep it moving until we finish the 8 miles. And then they'll have free time around the campfire at the end of the day, at the end of the evening, as the sun goes down, to be able to reflect on what what they've been going over, and how they proceeded through the first day. Now, day two, we'll start with breakfast again, but it will be more for the mind. The mental health professionals will be running this, and we've asked them to do 3 sessions and offer one-on-one time if the member wants one-on-one time to talk through anything that they're going on that might have been brought to the surface the day before, or something that they need to talk with a mental health provider about. Now, we will explain to them that they don't have the full 100% confidentiality that the chaplains have, and we'll let them know the limitations. This won't be open to case file. It'll be more educational and just general counseling for them. The first session will be going over PTSD and moral injury. The second one will be going over anger management, and the third will go over forgiveness. Forgiveness of self and of others, all focused around their experiences and what's happened to them during their deployment. And remember, by this time, they should be a little bit closer, and this group has already had the group session that I mentioned before in the assessment period. Now, day three is specifically for the chaplains. Now, we'll have breakfast, and then we'll start out with a prayer and meditation session. This should last about 30 minutes to an hour. Active stretching after deep prayer and reflection, and then we'll go on a 2-hour silent hike. Now, the silent exercise is, once it starts, this will be explained to them that they cannot say anything to anybody, to themselves, to each other, or to the chaplain team. Anything has to be communicated non-verbally that they want to get across. The chaplain staff will be there to guide them and give them prompts to help them get to the destination. This is a destination-focused hike. We're not telling them where they're going to end up, but we will guide them to get there by giving them injects, pieces of paper, and we won't even be talking with them. The hike will end at a field chapel that we have set up on the facility, on the compound that we have. Once we get to that compound, there will be a brief done by the chaplain running this, more than likely myself, on wholeness and what it means to regain that, and what it means to really see themselves as whole individuals, perfect, not without error, but maturing because of their experiences, and to build upon the forgiveness piece that they were talked to about the day prior by the mental health team. They will have lunch, and after that, they will come back and have the guest speaker who will talk about their personal story on dealing with and surviving moral injury and where they are today, as a testimony to where they could go if they continue to press with the work of healing from what they have been through. This will also be culminated by a ceremony where they will receive a chaplain's coin, just marking a day of completion for the event that they can look back on. Now, we can do the training, we can do the assessment, and then we can do the what I like to call the soul repair pilgrimage. But how do we keep this at the forefront? How do we stay proactive instead of being reactive? A lot of times we will have deaths in our unit via suicide. There will be deaths across the Air Force due to suicide, or something will happen that will cause commanders and leadership at the highest level to want our units to react. And let me tell you how our airmen will see this. They'll say, oh, we're going to have another day. We got to do another retreat. We got to do another memorial. We have to do all these things. And they question, does leadership really care? They will question the intentions of what our leadership is doing. And that's very sad, because they don't see our reactionatory actions as genuine. They just see it as checking the box. The answer to this, or my answer, humbly, is in our mindset as leaders. My answer for this is not just to host these. When they return from a deployment, we're going to do individual counseling and group therapy, and then send you on this 3-day retreat, and then hopefully remember every time you look at the chaplain's coin. It starts with our atmosphere. It starts with our leaders. It starts with you. I propose that we have an annual leadership summit, and I think that we should choose the month of May. May is mental health awareness month. And this would be almost like a condensed version. And who I would invite to this is our command staffs from all of our squadrons in the group. That would be the commanders, the chiefs, the first sergeants. Then I would invite key players, NCO superintendents in those units. And then I would invite also NCOs, those that supervise the frontline supervisors. Those three groups, because those are the ones that are airmen. When I say airmen, the ones that are the junior enlisted, will look to as reactionary. Now, why am I targeting that leadership group but not the airmen? It's because our airmen are our replacements. They will mirror what we do. If they see us as reactionary and they stay in long enough to be the villain, so to speak, they will be reactionary. But if they see us being proactive, if they see us being sensitive to the plight of their lives when they come back from deployment and say, hey, the chaplain's here. Hey, I noticed there's something off with you. Hey, do you need any assistance? Up front, and not waiting for one of our wingmen to kill themselves, or for us to see that somebody of high rank has killed themselves because they haven't been doing the self-care. They will be proactive, and they will help train up their replacements to do the same. So this annual leadership summit, and the annual is at a minimum, depending on the time currency that leadership teams have, we could expand it to biannual. But annual leadership summit for the proposal today will serve as a reminder of the symptoms, effects, and resources to treat moral injury. It will be a condensed 1-day version of this, starting with physical training in the morning, and then briefings on mental health, and then culminating with time with the chaplain on a silent hike with closing thoughts on wholeness. Now, in the middle with the mental health piece, the chaplains will be there as well, and we'll be talking about, hey, how they can take care of themselves and the resources available for those who work for them. So this is educational, and this is also personal, because some of these members will not have had the opportunity to have the debriefing individual and group therapy sessions from deployments, and maybe they're just getting around to it. But this sets a mindset of those levels of leadership to say, hey, these resources are available. This is what I need to look for. Oh, and by the way, I've been experiencing this myself. Maybe I need to see the chaplain or one of the healthcare professionals so I can address what I have going on in me, just so I can move forward and have a little bit more wholeness in my life. This is very important. I think that the continued awareness is a key piece to keeping this going, because this whole proposal is for our group, but I think that it could be tailored. I think that if you leave the leadership, being the commander of this group, you can take this to the wing that you go to, or the next squadron that you go to, or whatever you find yourself leading. It doesn't have to look like this. We are an intelligence unit with RPA pilots, and we're deeply steeped in seeing things that go on behind the veil. But this can be tailored for maintenance groups. This can be tailored for communication squadrons. This can be tailored for anywhere that has those potentials. And anybody in the military has a potential of experiencing moral injury or PTSD. But this has the potential to bring awareness, properly assess, and treat those with moral injury, and help our leaders continue to be aware to move forward, and just be sensitive to that. Not appearing reactive, but being proactive in their care and how we take care of our wingmen. So here's what we've covered. We've defined moral injury. We've looked at some of the challenges that people who serve with moral injury, and some of the challenges of seeking help, the stigma, so to speak. We looked at an assessment plan. We covered the holistic care plan, a 3-day event, and then we laid out a proposal for continued awareness through our annual leadership summit. Now, I think the assessment plan and the holistic care plan, the continued awareness, all build upon each other. And I think at the end of the day, for the bottom line up front, is to help our members be whole again. And it's to help them bring the best parts of themselves back from where they thought it was lost, so they can continue to serve, so our children's children can be free in this thing that we call America. I hope that you take this under consideration, and if you have any questions, please let me know as we move forward, and I'll be happy to share the details with the chief and yourself as far as what the cost and how we will pull this together look like. And I would hope to try to execute this after the next deployment cycle here in the next 3 months. Pending any questions, this concludes my briefing.